So this is not the most fun video in the world to make, but we're gonna do our best regardless. Because Kazuki Yao, better known as the iconic voice of Frankie, as well as Bon Clay and Django, has officially retired from all of his roles due to unfortunate circumstances. We're going to talk about why this is, what impact it has on the cast of One Piece going forward, and more importantly, celebrate the legacy that Kazuki Yao has had on One Piece, and thank him for all of his work with some fun stories involving Oda, Cola, and the fact that the character of Frankie was designed by Oda to be voiced by this man. So firstly, I should put this out there, Kazuki Yao is still alive and well. I think a lot of people are going to see a video like this and assume he's passed away. Thankfully, he has not. But for those of you who have kept up with the One Piece anime for a few years now, you'll probably know that this has been a long time coming. Frankie's voice in the anime has been on a steady decline for many years now. It may not have been hugely noticeable because Frankie himself, honestly, hasn't had a whole lot to do in the story in the larger part of this decade, most of which has been spent on Wano. And Egghead has been, Frankie was there. He had a few cool moments, but he does feel like a very absent Straw Hat. And that might be why this has come as a surprise to many people, because we just haven't had the privilege of hearing Frankie all that often. But the following is Kazuki Yao's official statement. The time has come for a sad farewell. Farewell to the dude I've spent almost a quarter of a century with. It kind of felt like an out-of-body experience, but I feel like a gap has formed between me and the Frankie I envision. And so I've decided to get off the sunny for now. I feel frustrated, I feel sad, I'm really sorry. However, we found a super replacement. Look forward to the announcement on December 22nd at Jump Festa. And I think that message hits particularly hard because Kazuki Yao mentions getting off the Thousand Sunny, which is, the ship that his character built and whose dream it is to sail around the world with. I know that when everything's all said and done, this is just a fictional pirate cartoon, but to me, that is incredibly tragic. Especially because Kazuki Yao is a man who really went above and beyond to create his characters. It's not as simple as an actor playing a role, especially in the case of Frankie, because a large part of Frankie was modeled after Yao himself. In fact, Frankie wouldn't be Frankie without Kazuki Yao. After hearing his performance of Django and Bon Clay, Eiichiro Oda created Frankie with Kazuki Yao's voice in mind. So he is, I think, the only Straw Hat whose voice actor was cast before the character even appeared in the manga. And so that does add a definite extra layer of sadness to think that Yao now believes that there is such a gap between the Frankie that he was and the Frankie that he is now, and that he's not able to live up to the past expectations that were created for him. So in this case, having the voice actor retire does feel like we are losing a large part of the character himself, and if you look at photos of a younger Kazuki Yao cosplaying Frankie, you can see that the resemblance is actually quite frighteningly accurate. Frankie cosplays are always a bit weird for me. One, because his body is difficult enough to create as is, but mostly because very few Frankie cosplayers are able to nail the facial expressions and the essence of Frankie. And I want it very much on the record that a large part of the essence of Frankie is this man. And again, it's not as if he just came on board with Frankie. Kazuki Yao has been with One Piece from pretty much the very beginning. He was Django and Bon Clay, so he's been involved ever since the days of East Blue. So we haven't just lost a Straw Hat, we have lost someone who's been with us on this journey from the very beginning. And I think it is remarkable that he stuck with Frankie for as long as he have and truly gave this role 120% of everything he had to give at every point in his career. As a side note, in Japan they say give 120% in the same way that we would say give 110%, which I find fascinating because even in impossible hypotheticals, Japan still has a heightened work ethic compared to the Western world. But it's not just vocal deterioration, but also physical. Recent photos of Kazuki Yao have been quite worrying because he's now extremely skinny, and to be clear, he's only 66 years old. We're not talking about some ancient 97-year-old Harada-style elder wizard. Kazuki Yao is still very young to be sporting this kind of physique, and I can only hope that he's able to live a long, happy, and healthy life in retirement. But this topic isn't purely restricted to him, because I think the harsh reality of this situation is that Kazuki Yao is probably going to be the first of many. One Piece is a unique series. There really are not that many shows that go on for 3 decades straight, and it comes with a lot of unique challenges that most projects never face. And we see that because every year we ask the question of, well, when is One Piece going to end? And every year that date keeps getting pushed back. I even have a video on this channel detailing the current theory that the One Piece manga is on track to end around 2032, regardless of whatever Oda says about wanting to end it earlier. And this does sound absurd if you haven't seen the video, but I would highly recommend watching it because it addresses a lot of pretty undeniable full truths about the current state of the manga, as well as the situation that Oda has built for himself to resolve over the past 2.5 decades. But look, that's just the manga. However long it takes for the manga to end, you then need to add time on top of that for the anime to end. At least a year or two, and this is becoming an increasingly huge ask of the entire cast. The youngest of the Straw Hat crew is Nami's voice actor, Akemi Okamura. She's a very youthful 55, and that's because she was relatively unknown when she was cast as Nami, which was a risk that was able to be taken because the rest of the crew were filled up by much more veteran and established voice actors. Mayumi Tanaka, for example, Luffy's voice actor, was one of those veterans, and I just want to linger on that for a bit. She was considered a veteran voice actor in 1999 when One Piece started, and it's now 2024. She's well and truly graduated from veteran to one of the greatest legends in the industry, but Mayumi Tanaka is 69 and has publicly stated concerns that she may not be alive by the time that the One Piece anime ends. She's even had the rather morbid thought that she should probably choose a replacement for Luffy now, so that if the time comes, then fans will be able to accept that new person as Luffy. And that statement was made 4 years ago now. But Mayumi Tanaka has been thinking about this potential reality for even longer than that. And even though there are no public statements from them, you would have to assume that the rest of the Straw Hat voices have had to seriously consider this. Mayumi Tanaka has also stated that her voice acting career will end with Luffy. Although it's impossible to tell when that end will be, it's very possible that she could be in her 80s by the time that One Piece is truly over, which is not unprecedented, because Dragon Ball's Goku is voiced by actor Masuko Nozawa, who is an astonishing 88 years old and still voicing Goku in the currently airing Dragon Ball Daima. And to put some weird perspective on that, she started her career as a child actress at the age of 3 and has been working consistently since 1939, so from World War II onwards. And I bring her up because not only is Masuko Nozawa just amazing, but because a lot of people do tend to lean on her in discussions like this, but she is an extremely rare exception. We should not be holding other voice actors to the bar set by Masuko Nozawa, because almost none of them are going to meet it. And to bring this back around to One Piece, she also happens to play the eternally youthful Dr. Kureha. But on a lighter note, Mayumi Tanaka, despite her worries about the future, is still very active. Most recently, she's been playing Turbo Granny in Dandadan. But this is definitely a concern for the entire crew. Remember, Nami at 55 is the youngest, while the rest of the crew are in their late 50s, 60s, and Jinbei's voice actor, Katsuhisa Hoki, is 77 years old. And that's just what happens when you have a show that's been running since 1999. If you really want to feel old and you're of a similar vintage to me, then here are some shocking facts. Chopper's voice actor, Ikue Otani, is actually better known as the voice of Pikachu, and Robin's voice actor, Yoriko Yamaguchi, is Nurse Joy. So a lot of these people have had careers longer than I've had life in general. And I'm no longer legally allowed to use the word young to describe myself, which is why I was really surprised when I made a video covering the Wit Studio One Piece remake and stated that, in my opinion, the Straw Hat should have a completely new cast for that project. Back then, I'd say opinion was split about 50-50. There were a lot of people who I think did see the realistic need for something like this, but also see it as a golden opportunity to pass One Piece on to the next generation. Because One Piece as a whole is a story about the new generation inheriting the world and choosing their own paths. So I think that having a whole new Straw Hat crew would be like Shanks passing the Straw Hat on to Luffy. And there will never be a better and cleaner chance in this. And I mean, what would be our best case scenario for this remake? Personally, I think the best case scenario would be for the remake to go through the entire series. But that is a task that is going to take well over a decade to complete. And as it is, again, we don't even know when the original One Piece anime is going to end. Realistically, it could take close to another 10 years from this moment at its current pace, because we still have no idea when the manga is going to end. So I think it's a wild idea to ask the current voice actors to sign on to a brand new One Piece series, a series that a lot of them definitely won't be able to finish, on top of the existing original anime commitment that even then they're not sure they'll be able to fulfill. It's not that I don't want them to be a part of the project, and quite frankly, the moment that Mayumi Tanaka officially retires from voice acting is going to feel like a family tragedy to me, because I've been listening to her every week for 2/3 of my life now. But I do think that Kazuki Ao's retirement has shown people why the unfortunate need for this exists, and there's definitely been a noticeable shift in opinion, with a very majorific 77% of Grand Fleet members thinking that this is the best opportunity to pass the torch on and keep One Piece going for a whole new generation of viewers. But to bring this back to Kazuki Yao, this is not all sad news. This is a celebration of a crazy career. And Oda, as alluded to before, has had quite a close relationship to him. In an SBS interview, Eiichiro Oda introduced Kazuki Yao as the quote, loud guy who handles all of One Piece's weird voices. And Oda then asked him out of Frankie, Bon Clay, and Django, which is the character who resembles him the most. And Yao couldn't answer. He insisted that they were all him. And I think you can actually see that quite clearly because when he was younger, Kazuki Yao actually cosplayed both Bon Clay and Frankie. No Django representation that I'm aware of, but again, that Frankie, it looks pretty damn spot on. But there's also a photo of him from 2021 with the rest of the crew performing some Bon Clay ballet kenpo in the background. In one interview, Kazuki Yao also stated that it was his secret plan to keep voicing One Piece characters until he eventually got a role on the crew. And he was going to be absolutely relentless with his vocals, and that definitely made an impression on Oda. But my favorite Kazuki Yao story is about the reaction that children started having to him after he began playing Frankie. This awesome cyborg man resonated with kids a lot more than his previous characters, and so from that moment on, whenever he was in public at a restaurant or something like that, Kazuki Yao made sure that he would always be drinking cola, so that just in case if any kids saw him, it would not break the illusion for them. What they would see is Frankie drinking cola, he'd go ow ow ow, and it would make their day. So I'm really going to miss Kazuki Yao as Frankie, and I really don't envy the new actor who at the time of this recording hasn't been announced yet. It'll be quite soon though, but this is going to be a rough job, especially because Frankie as a character doesn't have anything coming up that really gives him room to make his mark. It's all background and side gig stuff for the foreseeable future. But with that in mind, let's remember Kazuki Yao's words. He's retiring because he doesn't feel that he's able to bring the Frankie that he envisions to life, and so he is trusting this new voice actor with the character to meet that standard of Frankie, and I think that we should trust them as well. And while I don't think that any incarnation of thank you is going to be enough to properly respond to what this man has done for One Piece, that's what I'm going to say regardless. Thank you, Kazuki Yao, and we're all wishing you all the best in a well-deserved retirement.